Dr. Phil's hand went up. The cameras froze. The entire studio, producers, crew, audience held their breath because standing in the doorway, backlit and trembling, was a woman no one in that room had seen in 12 years. A daughter who had vanished, a ghost made flesh. And the mother, sitting in the guest chair, had no idea she was about to walk back into her life. This wasn't planned. This wasn't scripted. This was the moment Dr. Phil broke every rule of television because some reunions are worth more than ratings. It started 3 weeks earlier when a desperate mother named Linda sat across from Dr. Phil with a worn photograph in her hands. The image showed a bright-eyed teenager with a promising future. That teenager was now 28, and Linda hadn't heard her voice since the day she walked out at 16. "I don't even know if she's alive," Linda whispered into the cameras, her voice cracking. The audience sat in that particular silence that comes when pain is too raw to interrupt. Dr. Phil leaned forward, his expression shifting from clinical to deeply personal. "Tell me what happened the day she left." Linda's hands shook as she described it. A fight, harsh words, a slammed door, and then nothing. No calls, no texts. 12 years of searching, of police reports that went nowhere, of private investigators who found dead ends. 12 years of birthday cards sent to an address that didn't exist anymore. 12 years of a mother wondering if her daughter was safe, warm, fed, loved. Dr. Phil paused mid-sentence. The studio went completely silent. What the audience didn't know, what Linda didn't know, was that Dr. Phil's team had been searching too. For 3 weeks they had followed leads that Linda's limited resources couldn't reach. And 2 days before the taping, they found her. Sarah Mitchell, living under a different last name in a small town in Oregon, working as a waitress, carrying the weight of a decision she made as a frightened 16-year-old. The producers wanted to coordinate, to plan, to stage the reunion with cameras in perfect position. But when Dr. Phil read Sarah's initial response, "I'm terrified, I don't know if I can face her, I don't know if she'll forgive me," he made a choice that surprised everyone. "Bring her here," he told his senior producer. "Don't tell Linda. Don't announce it. When the moment is right, we'll let Sarah decide if she's ready." Subscribe and leave a comment, because the most powerful part of this story is still ahead. The taping continued. Linda sat in that chair pouring out 12 years of grief. She talked about the last words she said. "If you walk out that door, don't come back." Words she would have given anything to take back. She talked about the guilt that had eaten away at her, the therapy sessions, the support groups for parents of missing children, the endless nights staring at her phone hoping for a message that never came. Dr. Phil listened the way he always does, with an intensity that makes guests forget there are cameras. "Do you blame yourself?" he asked. "Every single day," Linda said. "I was angry. I was scared. She was dating someone I didn't approve of, making choices I couldn't support, but she was still my baby, and I chose my pride over my daughter." The audience was crying now, some openly, others dabbing at their eyes with tissues provided by production assistants. Dr. Phil glanced toward the side of the stage, a brief, almost imperceptible look, and there, hidden from Linda's view, stood Sarah. She was shaking. Her hands gripped the edge of the backstage curtain so tightly her knuckles were white. A producer stood beside her, whispering, "You don't have to do this. We can wait. We can—" But Sarah was watching her mother cry on that monitor, and something inside her broke open. "She still has the photograph," she whispered, "the one from my 16th birthday." The photograph Linda was holding in her lap, the one she'd been carrying for 12 years. Dr. Phil saw Sarah's face on the backstage monitor. He saw the decision forming, and he knew this moment couldn't wait for commercial breaks or producer cues or carefully planned staging. He held up his hand, stopped the tape. The command echoed through the studio. Cameras lowered. The audience murmured in confusion. Linda looked up, startled. "What's happening?" Dr. Phil stood. He walked to the edge of the stage, his expression unreadable. "Linda, I need you to trust me for a moment. Can you do that?" She nodded, uncertain, still clutching that photograph. Off camera, Dr. Phil made a choice no producer expected. He turned to the backstage area and said, loud enough for everyone to hear, "Sarah, this is your moment. No one can make this choice for you, but if you're ready, your mother is right here." The studio went dead silent. Linda's face went pale. "What did you just say?" For a moment, nothing happened. The backstage curtain didn't move. The audience held their collective breath, and then slowly, a hand appeared on the edge of the fabric, and then a face, and then a woman stepped into the light. Linda stood so fast her chair nearly tipped over. Her photograph fell from her hands, fluttering to the studio floor. Her mouth opened, but no sound came out, because standing 10 feet away, looking exactly like the girl in that photograph, but older, worn, beautiful in a way only survival can make someone beautiful, was her daughter. "Mom?" Sarah's voice was small, broken, hopeful. Linda's legs nearly gave out. Dr. Phil caught her elbow, steadying her. "It's okay," he said quietly. "It's really her." "Sarah?" Linda's voice was a sob and a prayer and a question all at once. What happened next no script could capture. Linda didn't run. Sarah didn't run. They walked toward each other with the kind of cautious hope that comes from 12 years of believing this moment would never happen. And when they finally reached each other, when Linda's hands touched her daughter's face like she was checking to make sure she was real, the entire studio broke. The audience stood. Some were applauding, but most were just crying. The camera operators kept filming, even though their own vision was blurred. Even the hardened producers, who had seen hundreds of emotional reunions, were wiping their eyes. Dr. Phil stepped back, giving them space. This wasn't about television anymore. This was about a mother and daughter finding their way back to each other across an impossible distance. "I'm sorry," Sarah kept saying. "I'm so sorry." "I'm sorry too," Linda said, holding her daughter's face in her hands. "I love you. I never stopped loving you, not for 1 second." They held each other the way people hold on when they've lost everything and found it again. The kind of embrace that doesn't let go, because letting go once almost destroyed them both. But what happened next is something no one in the room or watching at home saw coming. When they finally separated, still holding hands like they were afraid the other might disappear, Sarah reached into her pocket. Her hands were shaking so badly she almost dropped what she pulled out. It was a small silver bracelet, tarnished with age, scratched and worn. "You gave this to me," Sarah said, her voice breaking, "on my 16th birthday, 2 hours before our fight. I wore it every single day for 12 years, even when I hated myself for leaving, even when I thought you'd never want to see me again." Linda stared at the bracelet.
"I had one made for myself, too," she whispered. She held up her wrist. An identical bracelet, just as worn, just as loved. The symbolism wasn't lost on anyone. 2 bracelets, 2 women connected across 12 years of silence by something as simple and profound as a mother's love and a daughter's memory. Dr. Phil stepped forward then, his voice gentle but firm. "Linda, Sarah, I want you both to hear this. What happened between you 12 years ago, that was pain speaking, fear speaking. But what happens from today forward, that's your choice, and I want to make sure you have support." He turned to address the camera directly, speaking to the audience at home. Estrangement between parents and children is one of the most painful experiences a family can face, and reconciliation isn't magic, it's work, it's therapy. It's having hard conversations and setting boundaries and learning to trust again. He looked back at Linda and Sarah. "My team has arranged for both of you to work with family therapists. We're going to make sure you have the tools to rebuild this relationship the right way, not the TV movie way, the real way." The audience applauded, but Dr. Phil wasn't done. "And Sarah, I want you to know something. Running away at 16 doesn't make you a bad person. It makes you a scared kid who made a desperate choice. What makes you brave is standing here today. What makes you remarkable is that you held on to that bracelet. You never let go of the hope that maybe someday you could come home. Sarah broke down. Linda held her, and Dr. Phil, who had presided over thousands of emotional moments in his career, stood there with tears in his own eyes. Because this moment wasn't about ratings. It wasn't about viral clips or social media shares. This was about what happens when you give someone a second chance. When you choose healing over pride. When you realize that family, despite everything, is worth fighting for. Share and subscribe. Make sure this story is never forgotten. After the cameras officially stopped rolling, Linda and Sarah stayed on that stage for another 20 minutes, just talking, catching up on 12 lost years and whispered conversations punctuated by tears and laughter. Dr. Phil sat with them, not as a TV host, but as someone who understood that some moments need protection from the outside world. The photograph that Linda had dropped earlier was picked up by a production assistant and handed back to her. Linda held it up next to Sarah's face. "You look just like this," she said, smiling through tears. "Just like I remember." "I look older," Sarah said. "You look alive," Linda corrected. "That's all I ever wanted." In the weeks that followed, Linda and Sarah began the hard work of reconciliation. The therapy sessions Dr. Phil arranged became a lifeline. They talked about the past, the fight, the words they couldn't take back, the years of silence. But more importantly, they talked about the future. Sarah moved back to her hometown, not into her mother's house. Boundaries were important, but close enough that they could see each other regularly. They started with coffee once a week, then dinner, then holidays. Slowly, carefully, they rebuilt what had been broken. The bracelet became their symbol. On hard days, when old wounds threatened to resurface, they would touch their wrists and remember the moment on Dr. Phil's stage when they chose each other again. Dr. Phil followed their progress privately. He didn't exploit their story for follow-up episodes or ratings bumps. He simply made sure they had what they needed to heal. Because that's what he does. Not for cameras, not for applause, but because he believes that families, even broken ones, deserve a chance to come back together. A year later, Sarah sent Dr. Phil a letter. In it, she included a photograph. Her and Linda, arms around each other, both wearing those silver bracelets, both smiling in a way that only comes from surviving something impossible and coming out stronger. The letter said, "You gave me back my mother, and you gave my mother back my daughter. I don't have words big enough to thank you for that, but I want you to know that every day we choose each other, every single day, and that choice started on your stage, Dr. Phil." Dr. Phil kept that letter in his desk drawer, not as a trophy, but as a reminder. A reminder that television, at its best, can do more than entertain. It can heal. It can reconnect. It can give people second chances they thought were impossible. The audience that day never forgot what they witnessed. Many said it was the most powerful moment they'd ever experienced in person. One woman wrote to the show months later, "I'd been estranged from my own son for 3 years. Watching Linda and Sarah find each other again gave me the courage to pick up the phone. We're rebuilding now, one conversation at a time." That's the ripple effect Dr. Phil understood. One reunion doesn't just heal one family. It gives permission to thousands of others to try, to hope, to believe that what seems impossible might just be one brave decision away. In those final moments on stage, before Linda and Sarah left together, Dr. Phil said something that captured everything. "This is what I do this for. Not the ratings, not the fame. For this. For moments when people remember that love is stronger than pride, that family is worth the fight, that coming home is always an option. And sometimes, the most powerful thing you can do is stop the cameras, break the rules, and let love do what it does best, find its way home. The silver bracelets still hang on their wrists, tarnished, worn, beautiful, because some bonds, no matter how long they're broken, were always meant to be whole.